These guys aren't your typical teenagers. They're full-blown Karens who boldly took on the law without hesitation. These are the tales of the 15 most dangerous teens who thought they could outplay the system, but failed miserably. From ridiculous blunders to utterly bizarre courtroom chaos, these young troublemakers managed to find themselves in some seriously boiling water. Number 15. Mackenzie Sharilla. Mackenzie Sharilla became a name no one in Strongsville, Ohio, will easily forget. Known as Hell on Wheels, she made national headlines after slamming her Toyota Camry into a warehouse wall, killing her boyfriend Dominic Russo and his friend Davian Flanagan. But this wasn't some reckless accident. Investigators later pulled chilling videos from Dominic's phone, exposing Mackenzie's toxic behavior and open threats to crash the car with him inside. What looked like an impulsive crash was actually a calculated setup. She even took a test drive down that road a few days earlier, choosing the route carefully. Then came the aftermath. Zero remorse, smiling TikToks after leaving the hospital, and a request to just get her license suspended. The judge, Nancy Margaret Russo, wasn't fooled. She slammed her with 2 concurrent sentences of 15 years to life and said this wasn't an accident. It was premeditated murder. Mackenzie cried in court, but the damage was done. Dominic and Davian were gone. Number 14. Jeremy Goodale and Willard Miller. It started with Jeremy and a vendetta against his high school Spanish teacher, Nohema Graber. She'd given him a grade he couldn't let go of. So, Jeremy teamed up with his friend Willard, and the two plotted something unthinkable. Armed with a baseball bat, they stalked Graber during one of her daily walks in the park and ambushed her. They beat her to death right there, with no mercy. Police launched a full investigation, gathering everything they needed to build their case. During the trial, prosecutors laid out the evidence in painful detail. Jeremy was seen sobbing in court, apologizing to Graber's family. But it didn't change the outcome. Judge Sean Showers weighed his age, his clean record, and the chance for rehabilitation. But the brutality outweighed it all. In the end, Jeremy was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. A teacher lost her life over a grade. No coming back from that. How can they do it? Number 13. Shondell Jackson. Shondell Jackson was 19 when he and his friend Derek Thomas came up with the idiotic idea to rob someone. They targeted 21-year-old Nathan Potter, a University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee student, just walking home. But instead of a quick snatch and run, Shondell pulled out a gun and shot Nathan without hesitation. Nathan bled out right there and died. Shondell and Derek were arrested and charged with murder. During the trial, instead of showing even an ounce of regret, Shondell hurled insults at Nathan's grieving family when the jury found him guilty. Then, as the judge sentenced him to life without parole, he completely lost it. He tried to get up from the defense table, forcing the officers to pin him down and pepper spray him. Nathan's family sat frozen, crying. And just when things couldn't get uglier, Shondell's family began screaming at the Potters like they were the ones to blame. Derek got 12 years. Shondell, locked away for life. Number 12. Dylan Shoemaker. On March 19, 2013, in Springville, 16-year-old Dylan was babysitting his girlfriend Ashley Smith's kids while she worked. But when she returned home, she found her older son, Austin, dead. Investigators revealed that Dylan had severely beaten the child, causing fatal injuries. In court, Dylan stood before the judge, crying and apologizing, insisting he never meant to kill the boy. But the evidence said otherwise. The jury found him guilty of second-degree murder. At sentencing, Austin's grandfather, Michael Smith, pleaded with the court, describing the deep pain and loss the family now faced. Dylan's attorney argued that his childhood trauma and anger problems made him unfit for such responsibility. But the judge had to weigh the risk Dylan might pose to society if ever released. In the end, the court handed down a sentence of 25 years to life. One young boy's life was lost, and Dylan's actions made sure he'd grow up behind bars. Number 11. Nicholas Lindsay. Back in 2011, 16-year-old Nicholas Lindsay shot and killed Officer David Crawford in St. Petersburg, Florida. But what really shook people was the way he acted in court, grinning during the trial while the officer's daughter sat frozen in grief. Nicholas was charged as an adult and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Then, in 2012, the Supreme Court ruled that mandatory life sentences for juveniles were unconstitutional, giving Nicholas a chance to be resentenced. His defense argued that his age, troubled past, and mental state meant he could be rehabilitated. But the judge saw it differently. He upheld the life sentence, only allowing for a review after 25 years. Then, in 2017, the court revisited the case again and found no signs of remorse or change. At 22, Nicholas was still unrepentant, and the sentence stayed. One officer gone, one teen locked away for life. No forgiveness, just a reminder of what one reckless act can cost. Number 10. Brenda Ann Spencer. Brenda, just 16 at the time, committed one of the most disturbing school shootings in U.S. history. On January 29, 1979, she opened fire on Cleveland Elementary School in San Diego using a rifle her father had gifted her for Christmas. 2 adults were killed. 8 children and a police officer were injured. When questioned about her motive, Brenda responded with a chilling line that would haunt the nation. "I don't like Mondays." That one sentence became infamous. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the country and ignited national debates around mental health and gun access. But sadly, even decades later, the core issues remain. Gun ownership has tripled. Gun violence is now the leading cause of death among children. Brenda's act, while extreme, was only the beginning of a larger crisis the U.S. still hasn't solved. She was sentenced to 25 years to life. And despite multiple parole hearings, she remains in prison. Her words still echo. Number 9. Evan Miller. At just 14, Evan committed a horrific crime that would echo through legal history. In Alabama, he brutally assaulted Cole Cannon with a bat and then set his trailer on fire. It was a savage, calculated act that changed both lives forever. Years later, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that mandatory life without parole for juveniles was unconstitutional, offering Evan a small sliver of hope. But in 2021, he faced resentencing, and the court wasn't moved. Judge Mark Craig acknowledged his rough upbringing and young age, but said the brutality of the crime outweighed everything else. His pleas for rehabilitation were dismissed. He was resentenced to life in prison without parole. Now 33, Evan appeared via video, showing a shadow of regret, but it wasn't enough to reverse the outcome. That one night, one bat, one fire, cost him his entire future. There would be no second chance, just a cold, permanent cell and a name history won't forget. Number 8. Jennifer Mee. Back in 2007, Jennifer Mee made headlines for her strange medical condition, which was chronic, uncontrollable hiccups. But by 2011, her name was back in the news for a far darker reason. Jennifer had been arrested and charged with murder during a botched robbery that ended in the death of Shannon Griffin. Once known as the Hiccup Girl, she now stood accused of helping lure Shannon into a trap where he was ambushed and shot. Her defense claimed mental health issues clouded her judgment, but the jury didn't buy it. The evidence painted a clear picture of premeditation and intent. Witnesses, call logs, and testimony all pointed directly to Jennifer's involvement. She was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Gone was the girl who couldn't stop hiccuping. In her place stood someone the court saw as dangerous and cold. No one expected this twist, and now she'll spend the rest of her life behind bars. Number 7. Denali Bramer. Denali from Alaska wasn't just another rebellious teen, she had a dangerous streak. While browsing online, she connected with a man calling himself Tyler from Indiana. He offered her millions in exchange for something horrifying: to kidnap and kill Cynthia Hoffman. Denali, enticed by the money, quickly devised a plan. She lured Cynthia on a hike to Thunderbird Falls, a beautiful yet secluded trail. Once there, Denali and her accomplices tied Cynthia up with duct tape, then executed her and dumped the body. But it didn't stop there. They recorded the whole thing, turning the crime into a twisted photo op. What Denali didn't know was that the FBI and Anchorage police were already closing in. Eventually, she was arrested and appeared before Judge Andrew Peterson, where she pleaded guilty. The courtroom was stunned as she admitted every detail. She was sentenced to 99 years in prison, all for a promise from a stranger that never existed. Number 6. Danta R. Wright. In 2016, Jordan Klee, a bright senior from Pioneer High School with dreams of going to the University of Michigan, was shot and killed during a robbery gone wrong. His murder shocked the entire Ann Arbor community. 3 teens were arrested, and in June 2017, Danta R. Wright calmly admitted to pulling the trigger. He showed no remorse, just a blank face in court. When it came time for sentencing, Danta stood there and casually said, "I'll be home soon. I love my family." His attorney claimed the smile was fear and blamed emotional struggles. The judge didn't buy it. Wright was sentenced to 23 to 50 years in prison for the murder of Jordan. Jordan's family sat in silence as the sentence was read, robbed not just of their son, but of any kind of closure. Wright's reaction wasn't pain, it was pride. And that courtroom saw straight through it. The sentence wasn't just a punishment, it was a message. Why do these people even exist? Number 5. Terrence Andrus. Back in 2008, at just 20 years old, Terrence Andrus was convicted of double homicide and sentenced to death. It began during a botched carjacking where Terrence, high on marijuana laced with PCP, killed Avelina Diaz and innocent bystander Kim Puong Vu Bui. His case eventually made it to the U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled that his legal counsel had failed to properly investigate and defend him. The decision pointed out several serious oversights that weakened his defense. But even with the highest court siding with him, a Texas court refused to budge. They argued that Terran hadn't proven actual prejudice, that these errors didn't change the trial's outcome. So they ignored the Supreme Court's findings and reinstated his death sentence anyway. It became a legal standoff between state and federal power, raising eyebrows across the justice system. Despite the Supreme Court calling his defense inadequate, Texas still sent Terrence back to death row, refusing to change course even under national scrutiny. Number 4. Jared Cano. The case of Jared Cano from Tampa, Florida, is a harsh reminder of what can happen when unstable minds lean into violence. At 16, Jared was arrested for planning a bomb attack at Freedom High School. His attorney argued for leniency, asking for juvenile rehabilitation and a mental health program. But the judge, Chet A. Tharp, wasn't convinced. The seriousness of the plan, down to the blueprints, materials, and journal entries, left little doubt that the threat was real. Jared never made a direct threat to anyone, but the intent behind his writings was enough. His lawyer, Candela Senor, expressed shock over the sentence, noting how other courts usually call for psychiatric evaluations or lie detector tests before such decisions. That didn't happen here. A friend who saw the plans tipped off authorities, likely preventing something catastrophic. Jared was charged with attempting to build and possess destructive devices. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison, a future lost over pages in a notebook. Number 3. Martise Fuller. In May 2021, Martise Fuller received a life sentence for the brutal killing of his ex-girlfriend, Kaylee Juga, a well-known cheerleader and honors student from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Both were 15 at the time. Martise, a football quarterback at their high school, had become violent and controlling throughout their relationship. After Kaylee reported him for physical and sexual abuse, he was expelled. That pushed him over the edge. On May 9, 2019, Martise broke into Kaylee's home while she and her mom were packing for a camping trip. He shot Kaylee 5 times, killing her instantly, and injured her mother, Stephanie. After the murder, Martise turned himself in. The community was horrified. He was charged with homicide, attempted homicide, and burglary. Although he pleaded not guilty, trial testimony painted a clear picture. Even when he showed moments of remorse, the evidence was damning. The jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. Martise was sentenced to life with no possibility of parole, no second chances. Number 2, Alexis Rogers. Alexis Rogers, 19, found herself at the center of a deadly road rage case. During a pretrial hearing, her lawyers insisted she wasn't responsible for the shooting. Alexis, visibly shaken, wept throughout the courtroom proceedings. On March 20th, authorities say she was driving a black Mercedes in the South Valley when a Dodge Challenger made a sudden left turn and swerved back, sparking a confrontation. Alexis chased the car, and during that moment, her passenger, 16-year-old Damon Luma, fired a gun, killing Efren Artie, another teenager. Afterward, Alexis and Luma fled through Texas, Nevada, and Colorado. When questioned, Alexis said she didn't come forward because she feared Luma, claiming he had abused her. She also admitted to being under the influence of Xanax that night. The hearing was postponed to give her new attorney time to review the case. While her role is still debated, a 16-year-old is dead, and Alexis remains in custody. Her future is tangled in a mess she didn't stop. Number 1. Kai Andrea Cook. Kai Andrea, a then 18-year-old from Daytona Beach, managed to overturn a previous 20-year prison sentence tied to carjacking and battery. But her criminal record started long before that. At just 10, she was involved in not 1, but 2 separate carjackings, alongside her boyfriend, Kendrick Bass. They lured victims through a dating app, and during one robbery attempt, Kendrick shot a man who miraculously survived. Cook's 2017 sentencing went viral after courtroom footage showed her mother's shock and Cook collapsing when she heard 20 years. She had to be carried out unconscious. But a year later, Circuit Judge Margaret Foxman allowed her to withdraw her plea, citing miscommunication with her attorney. At her second sentencing, there were no breakdowns. Cook stood silently, fully aware of what was coming. The judge reduced her prison time to 11 years with 20 years of probation, served concurrently. But even after release, she'll be monitored for decades. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you soon in the next one.